California native Father Michael Gately is the author of the book Consoling the Heart of Jesus, a do-it-yourself retreat, and is fast becoming a popular speaker on Divine Mercy. He was ordained to the priesthood on October 16, 2010, the feast day of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. It is also the anniversary of the beginning of Pope John Paul II's papacy, which the late Holy Father dedicated to Divine Mercy.
Well, I grew up in Southern California, and my life out there was mostly school, like as I was in high school, and sports. I played a lot of different sports, especially beach sports. I played a lot of beach volleyball and surfing, and yeah, my life pretty much revolved around sports and studies. And then I had a conversion when I was about 18 from the example of some priests at my home parish. First felt a calling to the priesthood around the time my senior year in high school when I was going through a conversion, but the real weight of it came when I was a freshman in college. When I was a freshman in college, I was doing some dating. I was dating a girl, and during that time I felt the Lord was maybe calling me to the priesthood, and I remember I kept going back and forth. You know, sometimes I'd think about, well, I want to get married, and other times I'd think, well, maybe he's calling me to the priesthood. And basically the call for me came when I was in the chapel one day looking up at the cross by myself in the chapel. And the Lord, I felt like He spoke very gently to my heart, not with my ears, but in my heart, where He basically said, it seemed that He was saying is, Michael, you can get married and you'll be very happy. And if you choose that, I won't love you any less, but I want you to be a priest. And then what I felt like He said in my heart at that moment was, will you quench my thirst for souls? And when I heard that in my heart, and I thought of all the things that the Lord had given me, being able to go to a good university and a good family and parish and everything, I thought, well, if I say no, who would say yes? So I said, of course, Jesus. And that was kind of the start of that. And after that, I was pretty much putting my hand to the plow. I found out about the Marians basically through the message of Divine Mercy. I remember I got like I think they call it the M17, which is the book that describes all the aspects of the Divine Mercy message and devotion. I got a copy of that, and it said the Marians of the Immaculate Conception, Stockbridge. So I think that's kind of how I heard about the Marians. And what interested me in the Marians and made me eventually join was just the great work that they've been doing with Divine Mercy. Well before I joined the Marians, the message of Divine Mercy had a major impact in my life and the life of my family. And I wanted to dedicate my life to spreading the message of Divine Mercy because I saw it as the most important message for our time. At least, of course, that was what the Pope had said, and that's what I thought in my experience. Well, I have a book called Consoling the Heart of Jesus. I wrote it it was during my first semester of theology studies, and I think the reason I wrote it was because I love the message of Divine Mercy. I love the little way of St. Therese of Lisieux, but the problem for me was that those the message of Divine Mercy came in the diary of St. Faustina. The Little Way of St. Therese comes in the Story of a Soul. Both of those books, the Diary of Faustina and Story of a Soul, are diaries. And diaries are great, but the problem for me with the diaries is that the insights are kind of all over the place. There's not an organization to them. So I'd read something in the Diary of Faustina or in Story of a Soul, and I thought, this is great, this is changing my life, but then I'd forget where it is, or I'd forget the idea or the teaching. So basically what that book was, Consoling the Heart of Jesus, in many ways it was sort of a way for me to remember the main points of Divine Mercy in the Little Way. And the way I remembered them was that I used principles of Ignatian spirituality, because St. Ignatius of Loyola was sort of the genius of organizing things in the spiritual life. So basically what I did in that book is I took Ignatian organizing principles and I used them to tie together the gems that were all throughout the Diary of Faustina and the Diary of St. Therese, so that I could kind of keep them together and live the little way and keep trusting in Divine Mercy. That's sort of what that book's about. And it's a do-it-yourself retreat that sort of is a formation guide for the message of Divine Mercy and living it.
If there are three things that bind these three new Marian priests together, it would be Mary, mercy, and souls. The Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary was founded on October 24th, 1673 in Poland by Blessed Stanislaus of Jesus and Mary Papczynski to spread devotion to Our Lady under the title of the Immaculate Conception.
It was back in 1673 when our founder, Blessed Stanislaus Papczynski, founded our congregation dedicated to the Immaculate Conception. At that time, many people believed in the Immaculate Conception, and in fact there was already a feast day of the Immaculate Conception on the church's calendar, but it wasn't yet a dogma. Nevertheless, Blessed Stanislaus wanted to dedicate his congregation to the Immaculate Conception, wanted to spread devotion to the Immaculate Conception, and defend Mary's title, the Immaculate Conception. In 1854, Pope Pius IX defined the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. The understanding is that Adam and Eve committed the first sin, and that sin deprived them of their state of grace, their state of innocence. As a result, all human beings after Adam and Eve were born into this state of original sin. Well, we believe that God gave Mary, his mother, the unique privilege of being born without any sin at all. Not only any actual sins that she would have committed in her life, but also without original sin. She was born without this stain of original sin. This is fitting, of course, because just as Jesus is God and is perfectly free from sin, we believe so too his mother is preserved from any stain of sin in order to be that worthy vessel, that vessel full of grace, that vessel who bore Christ, her Son, in her womb. 4 years after the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, Our Lady appeared to Bernadette Soubirous, who was a girl living in a remote village in France. Our Lady told her, "I am the Immaculate Conception." And when people learned through Bernadette that Our Lady had said this, this was then understood to be a confirmation of this dogma, because there was no way that Bernadette would have known about this new dogma of the Immaculate Conception. She hardly understood what the word meant. She didn't understand what the word meant. Nevertheless, this was Our Lady's confirmation that yes, she was conceived without original sin. Our Lady was conceived without original sin.
Since 1941, the Marian Fathers have been the promoters of the authentic Divine Mercy message as revealed by Jesus to Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska.
The Marians were entrusted with the message of Divine Mercy by the spiritual director of St. Faustina, Blessed Michael Sopoćko. Basically, the story behind it of how the Marian connection came about with Divine Mercy was that Blessed Michael Sopoćko lived in Poland. St. Faustina died in 1938, which was right before World War II. Well, after her death, Blessed Sopoćko had all of her writings, but in 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland, and it was very difficult to get anything published, anything about Divine Mercy would have been very difficult. So Blessed Sopoćko heard that there was this priest who was going to try and make it to the United States, which was free and not in the war at the time. So he basically gave the Divine Mercy documents that he had from Faustina to this priest whose name was Father Joseph Jarzembowski, and he was a Marian priest. And Father Joseph took those documents and through a miraculous journey through Russia, through Japan, and across the Pacific to California, and then all the way to Washington where there was a Marian house. And when the Marians at the D.C. house in Washington heard his amazing story of how he escaped Nazi Poland and got these materials out, they all thought this was a miracle attributed to Divine Mercy, and from that time forward the Marians had been going pretty much full steam on spreading the message, except for one time when the message was banned because of a faulty translation. The Vatican banned it, and the Marians were obedient. They stopped spreading the message, but as soon as the ban was lifted, when the Vatican got the right translations, then the Marians began to spread it again, and so the connection with Marians and Divine Mercy goes all the way back to St. Faustina through her spiritual director. And since that time, the Marians have been the main promoters, as far as I understand, of the message of divine mercy in the world. The message of divine mercy actually ties into the Marian charism in a lot of ways. One of the ways, probably the main way, is that the renovator of the Marians, Blessed George Matulaitis Matulevich, he had a motto for the Marians, which was basically that the Marians, or a guideline for the Marians, that the Marians are to serve the church where the need is greatest. And he would say, well, how do we know where the need is greatest? He says, we should listen to the Pope. And the present Marian congregation, when we listen to the Pope, Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, they both emphasize that there's nothing the world needs more right now than divine mercy. In fact, Pope John Paul II, on many occasions, wrote letters to our congregation telling us to be apostles of divine mercy. And so the Marians serve the church where the need is greatest by trying to deliver to the world the thing that it needs more than anything, according to the popes, Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul II. What is that? Divine mercy. But the message of divine mercy also applies to the charism in other ways. For instance, one of the mottos of Blessed George, the renovator of the Marians, is Vince malo in bono. I think I have the Latin right. But basically what that means is overcome evil with good. And that's one of the definitions of mercy, according to Pope John Paul II, is that mercy brings good out of evil, and that you can overcome evil by mercy. So that's another way it ties in. But finally, and probably more getting to the essence, is that as Marians, our core thrust of our charism is to strive and labor in apostolic work, in rigorous apostolic work, to make the church as Mary is in heaven, immaculate. You know, the church is immaculate in her sacraments and in her holiness, but in her members, we've all got a lot of cleaning and conversion that needs to happen. Well, one of the best ways that helps the church become holier, or the members of the church become holy, is the message of divine mercy. And so Marians labor to bring that message to people, to trust in Jesus, being merciful, forgiving, receiving the Eucharist, loving Our Lady. The Marians bring that message so that the members of the church could someday be more and more like Mary as immaculate.
Blessed Stanislas Papczynski founded the Marian Fathers. He especially promoted the practice of praying for and offering his life for the dying and for the holy souls in purgatory.
These souls can't pray for themselves anymore once they are in purgatory. So it's one of the greatest acts of charity that we can do. And there's a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas: "Of all prayers, the most meritorious, the most acceptable to God, are prayers for the dead, because they imply all the works of charity, both corporal and spiritual." Jesus promised that anytime anyone prays the chaplet for someone who is dying, he will defend this soul as his own glory. Our Lord gave St. Faustina a great grace. She was able to visit the souls in purgatory, and after this it was impressed upon her that we should pray for the souls in purgatory. Blessed Stanislas Papczynski, the founder of the order, lived in a war-torn time period. He saw many soldiers who died on the battlefield and had no time to prepare for death. Blessed Stanislas also had a vision of those in purgatory, and the souls told him that the greatest suffering they had was a longing for God.